If you hear this story, don't dismiss it like a fairy tale. Don't laugh like they did. And for the love of anything still unbroken inside you, don't howl back when the wind speaks your name. This isn't about the monster you fear. It's about the one who feared himself. He never wanted to be a werewolf. Not in the mythic silver bullet sense, not in the Hollywood scream and slaughter tradition. His name was Jonah. He lived 2 miles above the frost line in a cabin with a front porch he never sat on, and every full moon he locked himself beneath it. You've heard of monsters who lose control. You haven't heard of one who fought to stay gentle. The town of Marrow Ridge, hidden in the Appalachians, had a dozen stories about why the wolves screamed in threes. Some blamed the old mines, others swore it was the ghosts of the drowned logging camp, but no one suspected Jonah. Why would they? He fixed fences. He baked bread. He cried when the school bus drove past his road, and once a month, like clockwork, he disappeared. One autumn night, when the fog clung to the trees like skin to bone, Sheriff Mallory found tracks, huge ones, pressed into the frozen creek behind Jonah's place. She didn't say anything at first. She wanted to believe what he told her, that it was bear season, that wolves were migrating. But deep down, she remembered what her grandmother whispered on storm nights. If a wolf cries, it's lonely. If it stops, it's close. Jonah kept a journal, a quiet thing, leather-bound and soaked in oil to keep it hidden from the rain. He called it the Ledger of Restraint. Inside, he recorded every transformation. Every time the beast came, out. Every time it didn't kill, I felt her eyes last night. She begged for mercy, I gave it. The boy dropped his flashlight. I turned away, I ran. My hands shook, but they stayed mine. He believed, no, hoped, that if he kept refusing the blood, the curse would grow tired and leave. It didn't. It waited. The first time someone saw him in partial form, it was a child, a hiker's daughter, lost in the woods. She said the man with the sad eyes had wolf hands. She wasn't afraid. She said he gave her his coat and told her to walk toward the wind. She made it home. He didn't. That's the thing about werewolves. The legends scream about rage, about hunger, about the kill, but they never talk about the ones who don't give in, the ones who claw themselves trying to remember. Jonah remembered everything. That's what made it unbearable. So if you see someone crying in the woods, if you hear claws scraping against stone with hesitation, if a wolf bares its teeth but backs away, don't run, don't scream, just whisper, you. Remember, don't you? And if it howls, not in anger, but sorrow, then you've met him, or someone like him, and may the full moon be merciful, because the beast isn't your nightmare, it's his. If you're still listening, leave your name behind, so he knows he's not the only one trying to stay human. Jonah's cabin had always been a mystery. No one entered without permission, not because it was forbidden, but because it felt like trespassing on a prayer. The porch creaked with the weight of secrets. Nails rusted like teeth bitten down from screaming too long, and under that porch, a trapdoor, wrapped in silver chains and ash branches. He forged it himself. Each month, he locked his own limbs, braced his jaw with a wooden bit, whispered the names of everyone he didn't want to hurt. It worked until it didn't. The townspeople of Marrow Ridge weren't cruel, just cautious. They'd heard howls, seen broken tree limbs, but in a place where fog hid everything, you learned not to look too hard. You learned to pretend. Until the day the journal surfaced, it was Sheriff Mallory who found it, buried beneath a loose floorboard in Jonah's tool shed, wrapped in linen, soaked in pine resin. She hadn't been looking for it. She was looking for Jonah. He hadn't come to town in 3 weeks. His water barrel was frozen, his chimney cold, and near the shed, deep gouges in the earth like something had tried to crawl away from itself. She read it, every page, every memory, every refusal, every scream behind clenched teeth. Third moon of winter. I broke the mirror before it broke me. I smelled her perfume. I buried my face in snow to forget it. I begged the beast not to look at her. It did, but it didn't lunge. That's a win. That has to count. And then she found the page that wasn't written in ink. It was scorched. Only 3 words remained. The wolf remembers. She took the book, but it felt like theft, not of property, of grief. Back in town, rumors spread like wildfire, smothered in gasoline. Jonah was a wolf blood, not a killer, but not safe either. Some whispered he'd made a pact with the mountain. Others swore he was possessed by the souls of the drowned. But Mallory, she believed something else. He was mourning, not a person, a future he'd never. Yet Jonah's only friend, if you could call her that, was a school teacher named Mara. She used to walk past his cabin after class, leave him books wrapped in wax paper, poetry, field guides. A romance novel once, he returned them with notes in the margins. Page 19, I think love is just a pause between transformations. She laughed when she read it. She didn't laugh when he disappeared. That winter, animals went missing. Not slaughtered, taken. The church dog, a fawn from the hunting ground, 3 chickens from a co-op. No blood, no bodies. Just absence. Like something trying to feed without leaving teeth marks. Then Mara found the symbol, etched into her door with a claw. Not deep enough to cut wood, just enough to leave a message. A spiral, a full moon inside a broken eye. She knew what it meant. I'm near, but I remember you. That night she didn't sleep. She sat by her window, holding one of his returned books like a shield. And in the distance, through the mist-covered ridge, she saw it. A silhouette, broad, breathing hard, covered in snow and sorrow, not moving forward, just watching. And then a howl, not like the stories, not primal or bloodthirsty. It was a wail, like a man being erased in slow motion. Mara whispered something barely audible to even herself. Don't let go, Jonah, please. He heard it. His ears twitched. His claws curled, and the silhouette vanished into the trees. They say beasts hunt, but this one hid. And maybe that was scarier, because what kind of creature chooses not to kill, even when it hurts to resist? Mara had heard the rumors since she was a child. There's a werewolf in the woods. Stay out past dark and it'll smell your fear. But no one ever said the werewolf smelled like pine smoke, or that he wrote notes in the margins of poetry. Books with phrases like, I'm sorry for what I almost became. Jonah didn't come back into town, but the ledger did, slipped into the school mailbox. Pages torn, edges burned, wrapped in black ribbon. Inside, only one entry. The beast inside me begs for silence. I gave it your voice. Mara didn't tell anyone. She should have. Instead, she went to the edge of the forest. If you're out there, if you can hear, may I forgive you. But silence doesn't always mean safety. And sometimes, when you call out to the woods, they call back. That night, the town heard it. Not a howl, a scream, low, wet, choked by something fighting its own throat. It didn't come from the ridge. It came from under the church. Sheriff Mallory opened the old cellar where the church stored firewood and baptism robes. What she found made her stop believing in clean endings. A trail of claw marks, not leading in, leading out, a rope snapped, and a message on the wall scrawled in blood. I didn't mean to sleep here. They thought it was a prank. Until Father Ray didn't show up for morning mass. Until they found his car, still running by the woods. No blood, no prints, just a silver cross twisted in the shape of a fang. Mara begged the sheriff to let her help. He's trying to resist, I know it, I've seen it. But Mallory looked her dead in the eye. Trying isn't enough. We need to stop him. Meanwhile, Jonah's pain was evolving. The transformation wasn't clean anymore. It used to be sharp, a snap of the spine, a scream, then blackness. Now, it dragged, one bone at a time, one memory at a time. He was becoming the wolf, wake, and still Jonah underneath it all. That's what made it worse. I'm there while it happens. I remember everything. I feel my hands stretch, my tongue split. I hear Mara's name in my own snarl, and I bite the dirt until my gums bleed, just to keep from crying out. He tried to chain himself again, but chains don't hold when your ribs break before your wrists. The beast inside was learning. It didn't want to be chained anymore. It wanted to choose. He made a pact. One night left, one moon, and then he would vanish. No more ledger, no more hiding. He wrote a letter and tied it to a bird's leg. I'll end this. If I see her again, I won't come back. But fate doesn't believe in letters, because Mara didn't receive it. She was already on the trail, armed with salt, a pendant, and a prayer. She wasn't going to trap him. She was going to hold him. That's when she saw it. A clearing. Trees bent in a perfect circle. Blood in the snow, but no prints. And in the center, Jonah, mid-transformation. He wasn't attacking. He was sobbing, clawed hands clutching his own throat, mouth frozen in a half-human cry, fur rippling like waves over broken flesh. Mara stepped forward. Jonah. His eyes snapped open. Not beast, not man. Both. Go. Please. Not without you. You don't understand. He turned away, slammed his head into a tree trunk. Blood ran down his cheek like melted wax. The werewolf doesn't want to kill, but it doesn't know how to be anything else. Then I'll remind you, but it was too late. The moon broke through the clouds, bright as a blade. His back arched, his voice shattered. The beast returned, but it did not lunge. It stepped back, snarled, and ran. They say when a werewolf runs from you, it's not mercy, it's prophecy. And the worst part? You're probably part of it. Mara tracked him to the marsh behind the old rail line. She didn't bring silver. She brought the picture he drew when they were 12. A wolf holding hands with a girl made of smoke. She waited there all night. He never came. But something else did. The fog moved wrong. It wasn't drifting. It was watching. Shapes formed in it. Not just the werewolf. Other things, older things. It wasn't a curse, she whispered. It's a bloodline. And she was right, because the first werewolf wasn't bitten. He was born. The town of Red Hollow had long buried its secrets, but old blood always surfaces. In 1823, a man was burned for being half wolf. The journal found in the church bell. Tower told the rest he would not hurt the meek, only the cruel, so they called him a devil. Jonah had read that journal. It was in the library's local myth section, but now he knew it was a warning. Mercy doesn't make you human, just easier to punish. He was hunted, not because he was a monster, but because he wasn't. He didn't attack the helpless, didn't feed on the weak. He killed the mayor's dogs because they mauled a boy. The mayor covered it up. Jonah didn't. That's when the real pack started hunting him. Men with silver in their teeth, salt rounds in their shotguns, holy symbols tattooed inside their eyelids. Werewolf killers, but not for protection. For profit. They knew the legend. The gentle wolf, the one who chooses not to kill. A freak, they said. A defect. And Jonah, he wasn't hiding because of the curse. He was hiding from them. Mara learned the truth in a dream. The ledger lit up on its own, each word inked in static. The blood moon knows who resists, and it punishes love. The next day, she found Jonah naked, curled at the base of the watch tree, eyes still glowing faintly. Hands still shaped wrong. She ran to him, but before she could speak, he growled, "Don't touch me. I'm not afraid. You should be. I found your truth. I know what they're doing. Then leave." She didn't, and that's when he told her, "I made a deal with the real monsters. They promised to leave you alone if I hunt with them. But that's not who you are. Then who am I, Mara? A werewolf that only kills to protect. That's not a beast, that's a myth. Maybe myths are what save us." He looked at her like he'd forgotten how to blink. "You can't save someone who was born cursed? Then let me be cursed with you." The silence cracked. The clouds moved. The blood moon blinked through the trees, and every mark on his skin lit up. Sigils burned into him since birth. The curse wasn't just transformation, it was a contract. His blood wasn't infected, it was signed. If you're still watching, like, subscribe and share this before it watches someone else. They didn't come for Jonah under the full moon. They came on Sunday, daylight. They came wearing town badges and Kevlar, blessed rounds, cameras rolling, to make a show of it. Mara watched from the school's rooftop, binoculars shaking, her walkie in hand. They're here, 4 trucks, dogs, someone's chanting. Jonah stood barefoot on the forest trail, shirtless, blood drying along his ribs from a self-inflicted gash. He needed the pain, not for the transformation, but to stay human. I won't kill for them, he said aloud, to no one, to the trees, to the sky, to the part of him still listening. I'd rather be torn apart. The moon was 2 nights away, but the pull had already begun. His nails were cracking, his throat dry with a growl that hadn't yet escaped, and the hunters, they knew. They weren't afraid. They were celebrating. Their leader stepped forward, Father Ambrose, the town's priest, not holding a Bible, holding a contract. Your grandfather signed this in blood. The pact holds, Jonah. He didn't know what he was. He knew exactly what he was. A killer who refused to kill for us. Then he died for it. And so will you. Mara's voice crackled over the radio. Run. But Jonah didn't, because the curse has laws, and one of them is simple. If you run from what you are, the beast decides who dies. He dug his feet into the moss, arched his spine, and howled. Not a rage, howl, not a beast's roar, a cry, like a man being peeled open, like a heart losing its shape. His spine cracked, his fingers tore through themselves, the air shook, but even through the bones, stretching. The claws erupting. He did not attack. The dogs lunged. He jumped over them, spun, landed behind Ambrose and whispered, "You broke the pact. Now they'll come for you." Then he vanished. No slash, no scream, just wind and fog. But that wasn't the end. That night, Mara opened her grandmother's journal. Inside, a passage she hadn't noticed. The curse don't hunt the weak. They hunt the ones who write the laws. One by one, the names began to vanish from town records. Sheriff Miller, Deputy Lowe, Priest Ambrose, all marked by silver tattoos, all gone. No bodies, no noise, only claw marks on paper. The town said it was wolves or fire or guilt, but those who'd seen Jonah's face, they knew he hadn't become a monster, he'd become a reckoning. It wasn't just a full moon, it was a red one. The kind that doesn't just rise, it bleeds. Mara stood at the edge of Devil's Ridge with Jonah's coat in her hands, his last human thing. Below her, the valley churned with mist, and within it, footsteps, scratches, breathing. They'd come for him again, not to kill him, to turn him into a weapon. The agency called them lunar assets, creatures too valuable to destroy, too dangerous to let roam. Tied to contracts, shock collars, pills that delay the shift. But you can't delay a memory. You can't bribe the beast. He emerged from the fog, tall, uneven, half-shifted. His eyes were still human, his mouth was not, and when he spoke, the voice was broken glass wrapped in poetry. Tell them to leave, or I'll do what I swore I never would. Jonah, don't, please. Mara stepped forward, trembling. You're not him anymore. Then why do I remember you? Why does this monster still hurt where you kissed me? The men behind her readied their rifles, but Jonah was done being a hunted thing. He bent back, bones popping like firecrackers, and howled into the sky, but not at them, at himself. The moon answered with silence, and then he stopped, on 2 legs, fur falling off like ash, teeth dulling, hands human again. I held it back, he said. For you, for them, for the promise that I could end it my way. He reached into his coat, pulled out a silver spike forged from the collar they gave him. This ends it. He handed it to Mara. No, she whispered. You told me I had a choice. So now I give it to you. He smiled, weak but real. Then close your eyes, and she did. When she opened them again, he was gone. But the blood moon had faded, and with it, the curse, or so they believed, because on every new moon that followed, a note appeared on her porch. Burned edges, blood smudged. Always the same words. I didn't hurt them, but I'm still watching. They say the woods don't howl anymore. No screams, no claws, no torn branches or half-eaten deer under the frost. Just quiet. But Mara knows what that kind of quiet means. It's the silence of something holding its breath. She moved far from Devil's Ridge, changed her name, got a job where the nights were never fully dark, and the only wolves were on documentaries. But some nights, just before sleep, she hears it. That voice, still half human, still breaking. I didn't hurt them, but I'm still watching. She never told anyone what happened on the ridge. Not the agency, not her therapist, not her sister. Because how do you explain a creature that chose mercy? How do you confess you love the one thing they trained you to kill? Jonah wasn't a monster. He was a man who mourned his own shadow. And now, every full moon, she leaves the back porch light on, just in case. Last week, she found a claw mark on the old sycamore tree behind her new house. Not fresh, but not forgotten either. Underneath, scrawled in the dirt, like a promise whispered in pain, the wolf remembers. Mara smiled. It didn't reach her eyes, but it reached her past. Now you've seen it, and it's seen you. Before the next full moon, leave a light on. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.